Looks like you're going there. I think you're live, so you're just going to start talking.
We're live?
Well, I mean, yeah, you can start talking.
We are live. We're live on election day. What's going on, people? We've got a few minutes here before, we've got like 1 minute here. It's pretty loud. If this is too loud for you guys, let me know. We're talking elections today. We are talking elections. And I know that we're not really talking any results right now because it is noon Pacific time, my time. It's noon. For you guys, it's either noon, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock. Maybe you're in Hawaii, maybe you're in Alaska, different time zones, but we're not worried about you guys right now. Sorry. But what we're going to do is just kind of do a run through of what we need to know, kind of where we sit, where we're at. I've picked a article from the Seattle Times. It's got a bunch of links in it. So we'll probably do this for, I'm guessing, an hour, something like that, maybe a little bit longer. I don't know. I just wanted to do a live stream because
Or doesn't look like we're live just did, actually.
we're not live.
No, not here.
We've got 6 viewers, though, it says.
Well, I mean, those people are always waiting.
They're waiting. Why are we not live?
I think we gotta. Hold on a minute.
There we go. Yes, you are live. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're all good now. It's up.
I can hear you.
Yep.
Thank you, John. All right, so we're going. So I know we're not reporting results, but the issue is I'm in Seattle, and when it's 8 o'clock here, when the polls are closed here, it's 11 o'clock your time. And if you're on the East Coast, and if you're in the Midwest, you're even later. And I'm in bed not that late. I'm in bed pretty early. So I'm not going to be, I'll be probably watching the election results, but I'm not live streaming at that hour. So I'm doing a live stream here at noon Pacific time, and we're just going to talk about stuff. What do you think about that? That's what we're doing. All right, so I've got an article from the Seattle Times that has a bunch of links to it, and we're going to run through that. I think there's some good stuff here, and I'm not going rah, rah, rah Trump, rah, rah, rah Biden, of course, but a lot of this is just what you need to know, what this looks like, what the timeline kind of looks like. And this is going to be one of those kind of live streams. So if you need to have more of a rah, rah, whomever your guy is, this is probably not your podcast, but that's kind of how I am. I'm not super political, but I still get the message across, if that makes sense. You guys know what I believe. All right, Election Day 2020 updates, latest results, and news in races for president, governor, others across Washington state and the nation. It's a crazy one, isn't it? This morning, I woke up and I'm like, what is going to happen today? What is going on? It's just such a weird election. You get all this stuff from the media and you think there's no way the results are going to be anything other than Biden winning. And then we had last, election cycle in 2016, and Trump came away with the victory there. And it was like, who do we believe? What are we believe? What's going on here? How does this all work out? And so I think a lot of people are like, man, I don't know. I don't really know. There's no way this is going to go down the way that we predicted it. I think the polls are wrong. That is my assumption, as they were last time. And from my experience in the media, kind of doing these live streams and these podcasts, and the way that I get censored, it's kind of like, all right, that's what we're doing. Does that transform over to everything else going on with the election and everything else going on with the media? I think it does to a certain extent. To what role will that play? I don't know. A lot of this stuff is just unfolding. So that's why I'm just going to give it a rip, and here we go. All right. So we're posting this. So from the Seattle Times, we're posting the live updates on candidates, voting, and results in Washington and across the USA. Numbers will start to trickle in at 3 p.m. my time, Pacific time. So if you're on East Coast, 6 p.m. your time when the polls close in some East Coast states. Early returns in Washington State will be posted after 8 p.m., so after 11 p.m. East Coast time. That's just kind of late. I'm not going to do anything on Washington State because you guys don't really care about Washington State. I don't care about Washington State, but you guys do care about Seattle because that's where chop jazz and all the nonsense is going on. And what's going on here in Seattle is we've got a lot of buildings are boarded up. People are pretty much ready for some major protesting, some peaceful protesting, and you know how that goes. A couple billion worth of damage so far. How much more will be done tonight? How much more will be done tomorrow? How much more will be done in the coming days? I don't know, but I think it's going to be a bunch. I know I was watching a news story this morning, and they had, I think, 60 or 70 armed guards guarding Rodeo Drive in California. And that's a small army. That's an army hanging out in Cali, and they're ready to get rocked or not rocked, however it is. And I recorded a podcast yesterday. It hasn't been released, but my landlord sent me a pretty good-sized checklist of things to do relative to my office space. And it basically just, it didn't say board up your windows, didn't go that far. I'm in Bellevue, which is a suburb of Seattle. Downtown Seattle is going to get probably rocked. Downtown Bellevue could get rocked. But I'm far enough east in a suburban area. The peaceful protesters are going to have to take out a lot of shops and stores and stuff before they get to me. But we are literally in the process right now of putting some 𝒆𝒂𝒕𝒍 cameras up. I've got a bunch on my house. They're cheap, inexpensive cameras, and you get them to do time lapse, and you get a history, and they are very handy if you need to know who is on your premises, around your premises, who might be coming in, who's lurking about, and you get a live stream to your phone. So that's what we use. That's what I use. We're doing up some cameras today. That's just what we're doing. And I know I probably shouldn't be saying that, but if you're going to come and, hammer on a spot, all right, we got you on camera. Good luck with that. And Bellevue police do prosecute. The only other thing in Washington is that Washington's early voter turnout reached 72.7%, more than 3.5 million voters as of Monday evening. And I think we are expecting here in the state of Washington, over 90% of the eligible voters out there will vote in this election, and that is a record. I think the last election, it was 80-something%, 86, 87. This year we'll hit 90. Those are some pretty amazing numbers. That kind of tells you how contested this race is, mainly for the presidential ballot. We've got a Democratic governor, our genius governor, 𝒂𝒐𝒕𝒍𝒆. He'll win again. There's no way he'll lose. Washington is far too Democratic for that to happen. It's just where I live. It's kind of a drag, but you got to deal with the hand you're dealt, right? So that's what we're doing, and I just banged the mic stand. Sorry about that. Hopefully the weather stays bad. Yeah, so you're right here, Mark F., you're right here in Capitol Hill. The 800 meters from 𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆 disaster. Yeah, so you're a half mile from 𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒍𝒆. Yeah, so weather here in Seattle has been pretty bad. I'm looking out the window right now. It's dumping. I think we're supposed to get between an inch and a half of rain, which if you're in anywhere other than Seattle, that sounds like just not that much. But in Seattle, it's a light drizzle. We've always got this annoying light drizzle going on. Today, it's dumping pretty hard. So that could put a damper on the extracurricular, those things that are going to happen after the election. That's what's going on. So I think the rain will dampen the peaceful protesters. Because how long do you want to be out in the pouring down rain doing your thing? I don't want to do it at all, but I'm also not on that end of things. So what we need to know across the USA, these are some of the things that I'm going to jump into here. And here's an hour-by-hour guide to what we're looking at. Your hour-by-hour guide to an election night like none before. This is what we're going to run through. We're going to run through what we've got going on. Following Tuesday's showdown between President Donald Trump and Democratic nominee Joe Biden, it means more than identifying the battleground states and remembering how the electoral college works. With a massive turnout expected and an avalanche of mail-in ballots to process, differing state policies on counting them, and an army of elected lawyers ready to pounce, Election night is the potential to end in anything from an early landslide to a drawn-out brawl that carries into 2021. What do you guys think is going to happen? Is this going to be a drawn-out brawl? Are we going to be counting votes for like weeks and weeks? I know we always count votes well past November 3rd. We just do. There's never been any contesting that factor. It's just that we were able to project who's going to be the winner, and we make the call. Major networks make the call. I don't know if you guys remember, and I'll be 52 this year, but when I was a kid, I was remembering, in doing my research for this live stream, I was kind of going through some of the stats. One of the stats was when Jimmy Carter won, and that was, I think, 1976. So I would have been like 7, and I would have been just exactly 7. I'm born in 1968, November of 68. So is that math right? I have no idea. I'm sure somebody will tell me in the comments. But yeah, for Jimmy Carter, it was one of those things where as a kid, you go to bed and you kind of think that your guy's going to win, and you have to wait until the next morning because you have like one national news network that's going to cover it. And that's all you had. You didn't have CNN. You didn't have all these network news stations covering all this stuff. You had your one go-to station, and if they didn't have the election results at a point where you had to go to bed, you're SOL. You had to go to sleep and wonder, well, I wonder who my president will be the next day. You're not old enough to vote, but it's one of those things. And that's the first election I remember is Jimmy Carter. And I don't think I really cared who won at that point in time. It wasn't until later. It wasn't until I got into high school and into business that I'm like, oh, this political stuff, this kind of does matter. It does matter who our top guy is, doesn't it? Because that's how policy kind of gets dictated, and that's how all this other stuff kind of trickles down. I don't believe the president runs the country like the way a lot of people think he does. But and there's just so much policy that is created that is outside of what our top dog kind of dictates. But there is a lot of stuff that it's like, oh, okay, I want that guy to be my president, not that guy, if you know what I mean. All right, so let's jump on in here. Massive turnout. Here's an hour by hour. Okay, so it's 7 p.m. tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 4 p.m. my time. I'll be in the gym, but when that happens, polls close in Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont. Worth watching. Based on number crunching by their decision desks, television networks and the Associated Press start making their unofficial but much watched declarations of who won where and how many electoral votes Trump and Biden have locked up. So 7 o'clock is when the action kind of starts. Call that the pregame. The winner is the one who reaches 270 electoral votes. An early measure of Trump's vulnerability is whether Georgia is competitive. Georgia, big key factor here. The state has gone Democratic in just 3 presidential elections since 1960, and 2 of those were when native son, peanut farmer, and former governor Jimmy Carter led the ballot. Here's what's good for Trump at this point in the game. If Virginia takes a while to be called in 2006, so that'll be good for Trump, is if Virginia takes a while to be called. In 2016, an early hint that Trump was doing well was that Virginia, a once Republican stronghold that had recently gone to the Democrats, was too close to be called for Hillary Clinton for hours after the polls closed. All right. So if we're kind of like, I don't know, that's good for Trump. Good for Biden. A win in Georgia would be an early hint at a very strong night. So keep Georgia in mind. All right. Senate status. Only thing I saw there was that Mitch McConnell and Senate Majority Leader and Lindsey Graham, one-time critic, has been one of the most stalwart defenders. He's a big Trump guy now. Neither outcome is likely. Those guys will probably win, but that's kind of something that is on the docket to kind of look for. Also watch for Georgia is set to elect a congressional candidate who has embraced the QAnon conspiracy theory, which asserts in part that Democrats are running pedophilia rings. Hear that one a lot. I don't really know I haven't really looked into that. I know I've got family members who are like, yeah, that's a thing. And I'm like, really? I don't know. I'd have to see some stuff on that to want to even take a look. But there are a lot of things out there that kind of point to, maybe that is the thing. Republican Marjorie Taylor Greene is running unopposed to fill a vacant seat in the state's 14th congressional district. That is Georgia. All right, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so 4:30 my time here in Seattle. We've got polls to watch. We got North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. All right, worth watching. Counting of mail-in ballots began 2 weeks ago in North Carolina, so results from there may become swiftly. Appalachia was Trump country in 2016. I've been watching a lot of videos of people from Appalachia on soft white underbelly. It's kind of a I don't know. It's a really cool YouTube channel, and the guy just gets in there and he does interview after interview. It's a documentary kind of thing, just talking about people. A lot of them are from LA, streets of LA, and a lot of them are from Appalachia. So if you want to check out Soft White Underbelly, there's some stuff in there that'll make you go, ooh, wow, that's a different lifestyle. And so Appalachia, it's a home to many of the non-college educated white voters who formed Trump's base, as well as the coal industry he's tried to revive. And that Biden had some comments like, oh, no, coal industry. Not good. Not good for the coal industry, Biden's comments in that last debate. So what would be good for Trump is he needs to keep all three of these states in his column, and only West Virginia is assured. So North Carolina, Ohio, West Virginia need to keep all three of these states. Needs to be wins for Trump. Good for Biden, a win in North Carolina or Ohio. Either one would be fine. North Carolina has voted for the Democratic presidential candidate only once in the past 10 elections. All right. Senate status, I don't know. That stuff. 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 o'clock Seattle. Polls close in a bunch of states. Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Illinois, Maine, Massachusetts, Maryland, Mississippi, and it goes on. So you've got a whole bunch of polls closing. The one to be worth watching out of that stack is Pennsylvania may be key, not just to who wins, but when a winner is known. So 5 o'clock my time, do we kind of know? Do we kind of get to that point? I don't think so. I think this is going to go way later. I think we're going to be counting votes for days. What is good for Trump at 5 o'clock my time is Trump is now a Floridian. Having changed his official residence and carrying the state as he did in 2016 is a must. Trump got to take Florida. A brightening economic picture there could help. Good for Biden. We win Florida, and it's all over, Biden has said. And that's probably true. In 2016, people 65 and older accounted for 30% of Florida's vote and supported Trump by a 17-point margin. Biden has made inroads by telling seniors that Trump's coronavirus response left them vulnerable. Does that translate into them voting for Biden? I don't see that happening. I think Trump takes Florida. All right, timing alert. Florida has experience with handling large numbers of absentee ballots, and this year it permitted counting of mail-in ballots to begin 22 days early. I think I voted I think it was 2 or 3 Saturdays ago, the first Saturday we could, and that felt really early to me. But we've had mail-in voting here in Washington for quite a while anyway. So in Florida, 22 days early, that means it may give a result rapidly because they've already counted a bunch of their ballots. But the opposite is possible in Pennsylvania, where ballot counting is not permitted to begin until 7 a.m. on Election Day, today. And election laws allow for ballot challenges and appeals to drag on. That's in Pennsylvania. All right, Senate status. Let's move on from that. Okay. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5:30 my time. Arkansas, polls close in Arkansas. Arkansas, all done. Since favorite son, former President Bill Clinton, is not running again, this is a Republican lock. Go get a snack. I thought that was funny. Go get a snack. Seniors couldn't care less about COVID. Unless you're afraid you're going to get it, and then you're like, it might take me down. If you're in that age demographic, I don't know. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So 6 p.m. my time here in Seattle. We've got the polls closing in Arizona. That's where things start to get interesting, right? Arizona, Colorado, Kansas, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, to New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, South Dakota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming. What's worth watching? If Trump can retain all the states he won by at least a 1 percentage point in 2016, giving him 260 electoral votes, 10 shy of victory, he'll need to win just one of Pennsylvania or Michigan or Wisconsin. I am horrible at keeping all of this straight. It's like, all right, he got those. Now, which ones was it that he needed? Oh, he needed just one of all these variables. All these variables, I lose track. Maybe you guys are way better at keeping track of all this than I am. Maybe you care more. I'll probably go to bed and go, all right, my guy either won or my guy didn't win. But you know what? You know what the bottom line is? When you get to my age, the election, it is important who wins, but you know what? You're going to make it through. Because I've had, 30 years of doing business with a bunch of different presidents, some good, some bad, some horrible for business, some we thought were going to be horrible for business, and because of economics, things turned out great, just weird. But the bottom line is, if you're alive and kicking, you're going to make it through this next 4 years no matter what. Is it going to be easier if one guy wins, the other guy loses? Maybe. Maybe not. We don't really know. But a lot of people are saying, okay, if Biden gets in there, he's going to jack the tax rates way up, and it's just going to be, it's over, game over, we're done. I always hear so much of that, and I'm like, really? No, it's not going to be over. You're just going to keep doing your thing, whatever that is. Might get a little harder, might get a little easier, depending what you believe. Maybe the news becomes easier for you to consume because your guy's up there and the other guy's out of there. Yeah, I can see that. I've got a lot of friends who are like, man, I cannot stand watching Trump. I cannot stand watching him. And I'm kind of like, I don't watch a lot of the presidential stuff anyway. I follow more business. And what that actually means is I'm kind of a layer underneath that. Because what the president said, yeah, it has some impact, but half the time the stuff he says is just like, wow, that's interesting. Okay, that's where he's at. I'm onto something different. I'm onto something new. I'm following real estate. I'm doing kind of specific markets and specific stuff. So whether Biden says something or Trump says something, it's like, okay, whatever. I want this election over. I'm sure you guys do too. All right, so 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We read the states. If Trump can retain all the states, I already read that. What is good for Trump is keeping Michigan in his column is among his hardest and most important tasks. So Michigan, Trump, Michigan. He won there by 0.21% in 2016, or fewer than 11,000 votes, which was the narrowest margin of that election. Flipping Minnesota, a Rust Belt adjacent state where he lost by less than 2 percentage points in 2016, would give him extra wriggle room. Wriggle room, that's a hard word to say, 2 words to say. That's a tall order since Minnesota has gone for the Democrat in every presidential election since 1976. So Michigan, just remember Michigan. I'll try to. Michigan, state with an M. Good for Biden. What's good for Biden is if Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin are 3 electoral bounties Biden could steal from Trump's column. Even more ambitious would be a win in Texas. I don't know if that's going to happen. I keep hearing that Texas population, you got Joe Rogan moving there and all kinds of craziness, a bunch of other people moving there who aren't necessarily Republicans. I know Rogan is a libertarian, but I think he's actually voting Trump this year. But you've got so many young people moving to Texas that are not necessarily Republican. And that state their demographics are changing. But I don't think Biden steals a win in Texas this year. And but a win in Texas would signal a Biden landslide and leave Trump with little room to contest the election results. Record voter participation in Texas makes the outcome that much harder to predict. We don't know. Just don't know. That's kind of where we're at, right? All right. So I read that. Senate stuff. Don't care. All right. Also, this is a good one. This is what we also need to watch for. One wrinkle in Minnesota is musician Kanye West, whose fitful attempt at a presidential campaign largely fizzled, but who succeeded in getting his name on the ballot there and in 11 other states. That's That's weird, right? I mean, Kanye West, president. I mean, what kind of message is he sending there? I know that he was backing Trump, and then all of a sudden he's like, nope, you got to vote for me. Got to vote for me. But I think here's the bottom line. Kanye has some mental issues, and he's manic depressive, I think, bipolar, maybe a little bit of both, however that works. And depending on if he's on his medication or not, if he's on one of those good runs or bad runs, he does some stuff. And this year he decided to try and run for president of the United States. So it's not from his lack of effort. That guy does some wild stuff. But president of the United States, Kanye, I don't think that's, you're a musician, good artist, but I don't really listen to that kind of music, but you know, it's not for everybody. But Kanye, wow, he gets his name out there. I mean, I'm talking about him right now. How crazy is that? All right. So yeah, here's the thing about Texas. Can Democrats win statewide in Texas? With a growing population that's young and diverse, not to mention 38 electors for the winner, because they're so big, and it's such a big state, Texas presented an intriguing target for the Biden campaign, which had to weigh how much money to spend there. Have you guys seen how much Biden, his war campaign, he has been spending way more money than Trump. Just outspends him in just about every state. Texas hasn't voted for a Democratic presidential candidate since Carter in 1976. There you go. That's what Texas is doing. Trump lost New York, his home for 73 of his last 74 years, by more than 22 percentage points in 2016. In the modern two-party era, only Mitt Romney's 2012 loss in Massachusetts by 23 points was a worse home state drubbing. And I don't think there's been any love lost between Trump and New York, specifically New York City, since he's been in the White House, right? I mean, he is constantly at war with New York. Right now, it's New York, Seattle, and Portland are suing basically the federal government because they've been labeled as anarchist cities. That's going over well. Nothing will happen there. That'll kind of just go by the wayside. But yeah, it's a lawsuit out there. All right, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. my time. And then you guys can figure out the other time zones, correct? New York City is dead and dying. Yeah, they are. Sid Luscious. Welcome to the live stream, Sid. All right, I just randomly do that. I'll just pick stuff and see what's going on and see what we're doing and talk about it for a sec and kind of move back on. Where did the money go, Inslee? Yeah, good question. All right, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got Iowa, Montana, Nevada, and Utah. That's where the polls close. Iowa, Montana, Nevada, and Utah. Nevada. Voting in Nevada. What's worth watching? Trump is sending record subsidies to farmers, a key segment of his rural base in the Midwest and South. Trump won Iowa by 9.4 percentage points in 2016, but his polling lead over Biden has been much narrower. Do we care about the polls? I saw a meme that was like, polls are for strippers. I thought that kind of made sense. I mean, that to me was just like, based on what the indicators were in the last election and how far off they were, I don't know. I just don't place a lot of emphasis on the polls. It's like, okay, yeah, I know they're out there, and I know everybody's saying Biden's going to win, but do I trust that? No, because of 2016 and kind of knowing what I know about polls, it's like, all right, they're an indicator, but they don't necessarily mean what's going on. So I think this year will be really, really interesting to kind of see how this actually goes down. And this will be our second election where we've had major media involved one way or the other. And we'll kind of be able to go, okay, maybe things have kind of sorted themselves out, or major media is still so leaning towards the left and supportive of the left that we can just kind of come out right out and say, yeah, don't trust the media at all. And I think people are already saying that, especially people on the right. They're just saying, yeah, don't trust the media. But yeah, you got to get your information somewhere. And apparently you guys, for some reason, think I'm worth tuning into. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here in this live stream. We just ranked 167th on some kind of podcast platform news stream thing. And I was like, oh, okay, 167 in the United States. That's pretty good for a news platform. But then I was like, well, how many podcasts? And I didn't get the answer to that. So I don't know if it was important, but somebody sent us a notice saying, hey, your guys' podcast is ranking. So thanks for tuning in on the podcast platforms. And thank you for tuning in this live stream on YouTube. Much appreciated. All right. So let's keep going. 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So for me, fortunately, that is 8 p.m. I'm still up. I'm still operating. I'll still have most of my mental faculties with me. I'll be tired, but I won't be, down and out like, oh, can I stay awake? The one time that was really awesome was when the last election, I had just flown into Hawaii, I had just flown into Maui. And so Maui at that time they're an hour behind Washington. So it was 4 hours behind the East Coast. So I was able to pick up all of what the East Coast was doing. And it still wasn't all that late in Hawaii time. And so I stayed up until like midnight, which was 4 a.m., and got just this great coverage of what ended up being Trump winning. And it was just incredible to watch that. I watched like 5 hours of the media because I was like, this is a pretty major event. These guys are all acting as if somebody died. That's what it was like in Hawaii watching major media. And media in Hawaii is incredibly Democrat run. And so just being there the next day, people were like really, really bummed out. They were, oh, what are we going to do? Oh, life goes on. Life moves on. So 11 p.m., California, Idaho, Oregon, and Washington, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. my time, polls close. And so that's basically your West Coast. What's worth watching? With only Alaskans and Hawaiians still voting, this is when the TV networks and the AP could call the presidential race if the result has become clear. If you got enough votes in and it's clear enough, and if there still aren't enough votes to come in, they would move it one way or the other, they're going to call it. And I think that's what they usually do. It's sometime like, I remember it's usually by early evening, mid-evening, my time. Obama was declared victorious at 11 p.m. sharp in 2008 as the reliably blue West Coast put him over the 270 mark. This year, the experts who run the numbers and make these calls have the additional challenge of factoring in how many mailed ballots might be contested or are yet to be counted. So the mail-in factor this year, so big, so critical. And I know we've had so much stuff back and forth on, should we do the mail-in? Should we 3 p.m. Pacific PCT's results start coming in? Yep, that's kind of the early results. All right, so also watch for in California. Oh, man, do we care? I don't think we do. No, we don't. 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on November 4th. Not even election day. It's not Tuesday, November the 3rd. Voting ends as polls close in Attic, Alaska, and it will all be over but the counting. I think Hawaii also closes then. Isn't that true? I didn't see Hawaii mentioned in here. Don't know. But Hawaii's, are they an hour behind right now? I can't remember if they do the time difference. They used to. They stopped doing it. I don't know. November 4th and beyond. Even in normal years, the counting of ballots, particularly absentee and provisional, continues for days, even weeks after an election. Sometimes, as in year 2000, a presidential race is close enough for those revised counts to matter. It's going to matter this year. I bet you there is some legal wrangling, no matter, unless it's just so widely obvious, there will be some legal wrangling. People will be going, wait a minute. I need my attorneys to look this over. The country needs our attorneys to look this over. You're going to have some stuff like that, unless it's just so clear cut. And I don't think it'll be like that. All right. So that is that. That's your hour by hour guide on what is going on. And all right. And my next, I think that is question and answers. Here we go. When we'll find out election results? Did we? Yep. No. When, I'm going to cruise through some of this. When we'll find out election results, here's what we know about swing states, ballot counting, and more. And this is the Washington Post. The coronavirus pandemic has changed everything about 2020, including the final act of the election. A massive increase in early and mail voting, with many voters seeking to avoid crowded polling places, has reshaped how and when most ballots are counted. So huge deal this time, right? Got mail-in voting. Since when do we have mail-in voting? And Washington's had it, but as a country, that's not been the case. And so it's like, oh, this new and improved thing? Or is it just this new thing that should we be doing this? Is there a lot of temptation for people to kind of get in there and monkey with ballots? I don't know. Some states have already surpassed their 2016 vote totals, and election experts predict that the rate of mail voting will range from 50 to 70% nationwide this fall, compared with roughly 23% in 2016. For the first time in history, most Americans are expected to cast their ballots before Election Day. And most of the folks I know have. They already have. With the exception of, I think, both of my kids. No, my oldest son, he voted yesterday, so a day before the election. And my youngest son, he's still working on that. He's a millennial, though. Those millennials, maybe they'll vote, maybe they won't. I can't really find my ballot. I could do it online. But especially millennials here in Washington, you know, our vote doesn't really count because of the way the Electoral College works. So I don't really care. I think that's kind of, and that's how I was when I was younger. It's like, I'm up here in Indian territory. I'm up in Seattle, Washington. Nobody cares about us. Nobody cares about the Seahawks. I'm kind of in that category too. Don't really care. But it's what we're doing. But you guys are tuning into the Seattle Real Estate Podcast, mainly because I say stuff that isn't entirely appropriate at times, but it comes from a business guy. So people are like, oh, maybe he can get away with that. Maybe he can say that. So as a result, while many Americans are accustomed to voting on Election Day and learning results that night, Election Day 2020, in fact, marks the end of a lengthy voting period and the start of a potentially lengthy counting period. That's what I was talking about earlier. And that's what I think will happen. I don't think this thing's going to be close enough for, I mean, I don't think it's going to be one so clear-cut winner that we're just able to go, yep, all right, don't need to really be concerned about all that vote counting that happens afterwards, especially with the mail-in vote. Don't need to worry about that. I think it gets counted. I think this goes on for days. Election Day 2020, in fact, marks the end of it. Yep, we read that. Some states plan to report results the night of November 3rd, but others expect it to take longer, depending on when they begin processing and counting mail-in ballots. So now we've got only not just the ballots to count, but we've got mail-in votes, and we've got to go through all of that. And then we're going to have instances of, did you see what happened in this one state? We got to really check out all their votes. They've got some shenanigans going on. You're going to have that in a couple of states, right? And it's just going to happen. Somebody's going to find a mail truck loaded up with ballots, and it's been ditched by the river, that kind of thing. And there's going to be a big workup. But I think that's just what happens. So even in a typical election year, ballot counting always goes past election night. Results are not official until states certify them, sometimes weeks after the election takes place. But most of the time, we've got kind of a clear-cut winner. The Washington Post wants readers to be prepared to interrupt what is happening in these unusual, Washington Post wants the readers to be prepared to interpret what is happening, not interrupt, interpret. But I think there is going to be a lot of interruptions, right? What is happening in these unusual circumstances? Here are some frequently asked questions about what we will know and when. When will we know who won the presidential race? It's hard to say. Thanks, Washington Post. It's hard to say, both for the presidential and for down ballot races, the ones other than presidential. We do know that some states won't have complete results for weeks, all right? Nearly half of all states will accept ballots that arrive by mail during a certain window after Election Day if their postmark indicates they were sent by November 3rd or an earlier deadline. And roughly 30 states allow voters to fix errors that would otherwise lead to their ballots being rejected. I know in the state of Washington right now, I think there's about 15,000 ballots that are being questioned because the signatures didn't match. Like you sign the back of your ballot. I don't know how you guys do it in your state, but in Washington state, we got to put our signature and our email and our phone number so they can call us. And like, I think it's 1% of all of the returned ballots have had an issue with signatures, just signatures alone. And so then the ballot people either call you or email you and they ask, hey, your signature was a little rounder, the one we have on file versus the one you put on your ballot. And you're like, oh, geez, just count my vote. It's me. That's what's going to happen. So you're going to have a bunch of that kind of stuff. And you're going to have it state to state to state to state. So we don't really know. We may not know about some of these elections for weeks. I think the presidential election, I think that takes a couple of days. I don't know. I'm guessing on all this stuff because we just don't really know. I know there's people like, well, I've got this poll indicator here that kind of tells me this and based on this and this. And I'm like, yeah, what you're telling me is you don't really know either. You have no idea. Nearly half of all states will accept ballots that arrive by mail during a certain window. We talked about that. Let's just move on to the next question. How do swing states report results? That's a good one. We will probably get earlier results in states with two key traits. Voters who have widely embraced early in-person or mail voting and rules that let officials process and count mail ballots before Election Day. So Arizona, Florida, and North Carolina could provide information quickly, experts say, while states including Pennsylvania and Michigan could lag behind, kind of because of their processes. So we're going to hear a lot about that. We're going to have a lot of experts created, political experts on the new voting system. You're going to have a lot of people, well, in my opinion, this is how it's going to go. All right, just tell me who the next president is. Is it the same guy or the new guy? What's it going to be? Arizona, the state, do we care about that stuff? Probably do if you're in Arizona and Florida and Georgia. But I'm going to kind of move on to something else. What do we got there? All right. So I'm going to go back. All right. This year's count may take longer than usual. I just kind of touched on some of that stuff. But here's kind of the big thing. Patience, America. We may not know who won the presidential election on Tuesday night. Probably not. And if so, it does not necessarily mean anything is broken, fraudulent, corrupted, or wrong. Or does it? I don't know. I have to find out. President Donald Trump has repeatedly suggested a slower than typical result is a sign of trouble. I think it's terrible that we can't know the results of an election the night of the election, he said on Sunday. I think it's a terrible thing when states are allowed to tabulate ballots for a long period of time after the election is over. All right? This is one of those things where you're like, okay, next comment. It's unclear what the president thinks is a long period, but it's standard practice to continue tabulating votes after Election Day. We all know that just happens. It's just most of the time we've got an election system that is different than that. And so, and we're just dealing with different numbers now. So here's a closer look at why that count could take longer than usual and why that might mean you go to bed Tuesday without knowing the winner. Like I was telling you about earlier when I was a kid. You go to bed and you got to wake up. Oh, who's the president? Tell me. What's new this year? The biggest factor that may slow things down this year is clear. Millions of Americans decided to vote by mail rather than risk contracting coronavirus at a polling place. And in general, those mail ballots take longer to count. That's where we're at this year. And I've seen a bunch of streams of polling places, and they all look pretty orderly. They all look like there's not a ton of people there. Are there lines out the door? I don't know. News story that I was going to do a podcast on, but I chose not to, was Amazon was asking their Amazon employees, either like 6,500 of them or 65,000 of them were petitioning Amazon to get the day off to vote. Are you guys asking to have the day off to vote? No, I don't know that anybody is. Is that even really a thing? Well, it is a thing. I looked at a bunch of different big companies, and there's a whole bunch of companies that are like, oh yeah, we encourage you to vote. Your right to democracy. We're going to give you the day off. We're going to give you a paid vacation. That's what the employees of Amazon were asking. They want a paid vacation time to go vote. If you can't figure out how to vote when you can put your ballot in the mail 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time, I don't know. Should you really be getting paid time off? And I think where this comes into play is that if you are an employee and you're scheduled for all day during the ballot and you can't physically get to a ballot box if that's what you're doing, then I can kind of understand. But how many people can't figure out their schedule ahead of time to get their vote in? I don't know. But there were some major companies in there that are basically just, we're giving you guys the day off November 3rd so you can go vote. Good luck with that. God bless America. I don't know. I kind of just expect everybody to figure that out on their own time. But that's me. I'm old school, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. So election workers must remove the ballots from their envelopes, check for errors, sort them, and flatten them all before they can be run through the scanners the moment polls close and be tabulated. In states with well-established vote-by-mail programs, this processing happens weeks before Election Day. The results are often released quickly. Okay, so that'll help out. But several states do not have this system in place before this year, and laws on the books prohibited election officials from processing the ballots well in advance of Election Day. Without a head start, there's virtually no way to process and count all the mail votes on Election Day, while also counting all the in-person votes. Can't do it. Not happening. So that's where all this stuff, I'm kind of like, all right, yeah, I think we're going to have this contested for at least a few days, unless it's super close, like I've said. And or unless it's so clear who the winner is, and there's just no other way. I don't think that's going to be the case. And why? I have no idea. I'm like 50-50 who's going to win this thing. There are three important, okay, we already kind of did the three important states. But here's a good point. But don't news organizations call a winner before all the vote is counted? Yes. There's never been a presidential race in history in which all votes are counted on election night. That's just not physically possible to instantly count that many ballots. Possibly as many as 150 million on the night of November 3rd. Media organizations, including the AP, Associated Press, declare winners in thousands of races on election night based on the results that are in voter surveys and other political data. So they are literally taking a guess based on the votes they have in and what they know about the surveys and other political stuff. Like if you got a certain XYZ percentage of voters that vote Democrat or Republican in a state, okay, we can probably guess that here's how that's going to go. So that election's probably done. That's what we're talking about. But in a close race, more of the vote may need to be counted before the AP can call a winner. Is there any hope for knowing the winner on election night? That's our next big question. Sure, not all battleground states are slow counting states. So if several key states release their results promptly, one candidate may have a majority of the electoral vote, even without knowing who won in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or Michigan. Here's where we start to get into these states. Okay, you got to keep in mind these three states at this point in juncture of the election. That's what you got, and that's where I kind of lose track. And sorry, and that's just where I'm at. It's like, all right, just tell me who won. So that becomes more likely if the races in those states are not close in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, or Michigan. It's a scenario that puts a lot of eyes on Florida. The state allows its election offices to process mail ballots 22 days before the election. It's also the biggest swing state. As long as the race isn't too close, a big if in a place famous for tight races, there could be close to complete count by midnight in Florida. And if Trump loses Florida, here we go again, it's very difficult for him to reach the 270 electoral votes he needs to defeat former Vice President Joe Biden and return to the White House. So Florida, big one. We've already heard that twice, right? I think everybody kind of knows that. The two other southern battleground states, North Carolina and Georgia, also can begin processing mail ballots early. They are both considered critical states for Trump. However, unlike Florida, neither state has a record of handling a large number of mail ballots. So we don't know what's going to happen there. It's unclear how quickly they will count those votes. Finally, two Midwestern states, Iowa and Ohio, also allow for early processing of mail ballots. Trump won both states handily in 2016, but Democrats believe Biden is competitive there. Results in those two states on election night could give hints about what lies ahead in the critical Rust Belt states that take longer to count. What is the red mirage? What is the blue shift? Have you guys heard these terms? It's pretty interesting. Watching results come in this year may be a bit disorienting. That's because the two parties are voting in two very different ways. Democrats have flocked to voting by mail, while Trump has encouraged Republicans to vote on Election Day. We'll just have to see what happens. I've been kind of prepping for this podcast up until now. But I haven't really kind of followed any of the other stuff going on. And when I point over my shoulder, it's because there's a big TV screen back there. Right now, it's got the Seattle Real Estate Podcast on it. Most of the time, it's got news. And I like to watch that from time to time. So I feel a little bit, I don't know, like out of the loop. But I'm here with you guys, and we're kind of just talking about stuff. So what's the bottom line here? We have no idea what's going to happen. I think that's to be honest. But now we kind of know all the deadlines we've got going on, and at certain points within our evening, we're going to know, all right, here we are. Oh yeah, I remember talking about that state, Florida, important, and a handful of other states, important. But it always seems like something just kind of pops up and really throws a monkey wrench in the works of all the predictions that these people make. Like, okay, you got this one and this one. This one's really important. And then something else goes sideways, and it's like all bets are off. You don't really know until you know. And that's kind of the way I'm approaching this election, is that tell me the results. Let me move on with my life. I did my part. I voted. You guys probably all voted too, I'm guessing. There's very few people I know that are like, yeah, I'm not voting this year. I think most people have enough, especially my listeners and my viewers are old enough where they've got a stake in the game, and you're going to make your vote. You're going to place your vote because it kind of matters, even if you're in Seattle, and it doesn't really matter all that much. So that's about it for me in this. I'm not going to cover a lot of this other stuff, but that's kind of my brief synopsis of where we sit with the election and kind of all the election stuff that has gone on. And I just wanted to kind of run through that, and I'll be kind of curious to see after I'm going to go through all the comments and see what people are thinking and kind of what's going on. But so if you guys want to tune out, I'm going to stick around and hang out I'm going to hang out for another 10 minutes and see what you guys say in the comments. And but if you want to tune out and say, hey, Sean, thanks for that podcast, or that was a crappy live stream, do better next time. I'm okay with that, because criticism is criticism, or thanks and praise. I'll take it either way. But thank you for tuning in to this live stream. So I'm going to officially start looking at the comments and see what you guys are saying. So thank you for being here, and thanks so much for subscribing and kind of being a part of this podcast. We just hit, I think, 26,000 subscribers on YouTube. We have a YouTube channel that is doing really, really well. And what's interesting is that the demographic that I am doing really, really well in is a demographic that does not watch a lot of YouTube. I'm 45 to 50 to 65, and probably more like 55 to 65 is the folks who turn in. So all you guys out there and gals out there, I don't have a lot of gals that tune in. My percentage is mainly men, because it's like a business and real estate, things that are kind of, I mean, let's face it, they're kind of boring. But I try and put a spin on it that gives you guys a little bit of excitement, because you just don't know what Sean might say. He might pop off with something just kind of inappropriate, which I do, because that makes it more fun, right? And real estate guys aren't known for doing anything creative, and because that's one of the few things that I am known for is, aren't you a managing broker and owner of an appraisal company? And yet you talk about some pretty wild stuff. Like, yeah, that's what I do. It's my thing. It's kind of what we got going on here at the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. So thanks so much for tuning in. I think we're at like 5.5 million views on our channel. That's growing exponentially, and it's because of you guys. So thanks for tuning in. I'm going to go look at some comments and see what you guys are doing here. All right. Even St. Louis is trending red. Interesting. 29-year-old female here. I like your straightforward analysis. Thank you, A. Gonzalez. Much appreciated. Thanks for tuning in. Got some 33-year-old female. Awesome. Forster Farm. Very cool. Hey, Nikki, your house tour videos are insanely creative. Very well shot. That's what got my attention. Hey, thank you, 1738 Creations. That's all Nikki Smith. He's our videographer, 35-year-old doctor from Seattle, EE. Thank you, EE, for tuning in. I know in the coal mines you get time to go vote, and they'll pay you $25. They say it's for gas, but you know what it's for. That's interesting, G. Baker. Thanks for tuning in. All right. Yeah, Culp is not going to win here in the state of Washington. I used to live in Seattle. I like this channel. And just skip forward. I couldn't grab your name. Drove around with my Trump flags on in Dallas. Got good response. All right. John Leslie, you're making it happen. Man, could you imagine if I did that here in Seattle? I drove around with a Trump flag. I would get crushed. I would get cremated. Just not even an option. I just wouldn't do that anyway. That's just not my thing. 16-year-old girl from Germany who is interested in politics. That's awesome. SH, thank you for tuning in from Germany. That's amazing. 57-year-old independent constitutional. Who gonna win? Man, I am 50-50. Up until the last few days, I thought Trump would take it. I don't know. Honestly, how is that for a podcaster? That guy has no idea. He is not willing to place his bet. I would say, based on last election and how close some of these polls are, that Trump's got a pretty good shot. But then everything I read and hear is Biden's going to win. Biden's going to win. Biden's going to win. And after a while, you're like, Biden's going to win. Biden's going to win. So I don't know. He could win. A lot of Trump flags in Gig Harbor. All right. Durkin, Seattle City Council, horrible. Agreed. Marty Darts. Hey, Sean. Hey, Marty. What's going on? Waved my Trump sign in Boulder, Colorado. Got flipped off a lot. Yeah. That's what happens. When you put yourself out there, you're going to take a little critique, especially Boulder, Colorado. My four-wheel drive truck, Shane Taylor. Is Bellevue boarded up? Really good question. I think downtown does have some areas that are boarded up. I know downtown Seattle's been working on it for about a week, and I had instructions to make sure my office is locked down, but I'm pretty far east. I don't know what the actual scenario is in downtown Bellevue, but I wouldn't be surprised. But our police department here is kind of all over that. They are hyperactive. So I think we'll be okay. Puyallup seems to be very pro-Trump. So the thing about the Seattle area is right in downtown Seattle in those areas, very Democrat. When you start going outside, it becomes Republican. You get over east of the mountains here into eastern Washington, you will see Trump sign after Trump sign after Trump sign. But the population over there just isn't all that great. There's not that many people. It's like one guy on a 200-acre farm, and so the density is not very dense. And so you have a lot of Trump supporters over there, but the vast majority of our population over here in western Washington is they're Democrat. I go mudding in my 91 Geo Metro. Good for you. That's aggressive. That's TK422. Mudding. Yeah, I was talking about 91 Geo Metro. My kid wanted like a 91 Geo Metro. He said it got like 55 miles a gallon. Just some absurd number. And when you get stuck, you can just push it out, no problemo. That's funny. Do you think Oregon could flip? I don't think so. Oregon's got some even worse problems than Washington. Their mayor, Portland mayor, that guy is really questionable. Yep, Seattle Department of Building sent out an email saying take in everything on your job sites and board up the sites. Yeah, that's from Shane Taylor. So, yeah, it's hunker down here in Seattle. But we've already had kind of a proven, guys, any burger places you recommend for lunch right now in Seattle? Yes. Whibley's Burgers in Bellevue are amazing. Whibley's, Bellevue. Go there. If you come to Seattle, go there. Others, Dick's Drive-In. That is a legendary place in Seattle. There's one right by Chop that I ate there. You can watch me eat burgers and some guy flip out over the fact they didn't have fries on my Chop at Night video on YouTube. You can watch that. That's entertaining. Five Guys burgers. Yeah, they're pretty good. I'm in New York City. Our state is in play. Interesting. That's Marty Darts. Yeah, I bet they're worried about all the Trump supporters rioting. That's the thing. Yeah, Ice Cork. Wibblies is the best. Yep, agreed. Yeah, the Trump supporters, I mean, we're known for just going out and just breaking into stores, right? No. It's never been a thing. How many actual incidences have there been with Trump supporters or right-wing, extreme right-wing supporters? A couple? And then how many of the peaceful protests have turned into, something other than that? More than a couple. All right. All right. Is the homeless situation a lot worse now in Seattle? It's horrible. When I've been there in the past, I would see them under major. Now they're literally living in our parks. And our police force has been defunded to the point where the people who would normally, the crews that would normally go in and clear out the homeless encampments, those are not happening. And so the homeless, Seattle, downtown Seattle and close in Seattle is being overrun by homeless people. Downtown Seattle is a ghost town. The only people you now see are bums shambling around. That's from Megadog. That is true. Very true. Yep. But it's only a small area. I just did a podcast on should I move to Seattle? And my answer was yes. Just don't live in a couple of small areas. One is the area in Capitol Hill where CHOP was. That area is always in play. And one is downtown. Don't live in those two areas. Live anywhere else. And you're fine in Seattle. It's like other major cities where you've got kind of Skid Row, like California with Venice Beach, you've got Skid Row. And then beyond that, it's just amazing. EE, thank you for the $4.99. Lost my Seattle business due to lockdowns. Probably end myself using alcohol. Good luck, everybody. Sorry to hear, EE, that you lost your Seattle business due to the lockdowns, but you are not alone. That has been a brutal, brutal run for businesses in Seattle, and that is not over. I think there's going to be a lot of fallout here in Seattle, and there's going to be a lot of businesses who are going to be going, no, wait a minute, we basically we're paying taxes and we're not getting any support. We're getting less than support. It's crazy. So EE, hang in there. Don't end yourself using alcohol. It's tough to wake up the next day. Bad hangover. No fun. Yeah, a lot of people saying EE. But no, that's been a thing. Is business here in Seattle is business is coming to Bellevue. They're leaving Seattle and they're going elsewhere. Amazon being the big one. Yeah, EE come east. Go somewhere else. Seattle doesn't support business. Take your ideas, take your energy, take your innovation, and go somewhere else. All right, so guys, that's it. It is 1:01. I am going to end this podcast because I got a bunch of stuff to do, including clearing out my office, get my computers out of here, and whatever else necessary. I think we've got cameras up. We're ready to roll. But thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. Really appreciate it. All right, that's it for me. Guys, I'm going to end it. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you shortly. I'll see you probably in a week or so. I'll do another live stream. I'm trying to do these once a week and get this going because I need the practice. I need to be able to figure out how to look at this screen and see what's going on. So if somebody else sent me stuff or whatever it is on this live stream and I didn't call you out, my apologies, but that's it for me. All right, guys, good luck. I will catch you on the flip side of the elections. Until then, stay safe out there. All right, bye for now.